Welcome to Split Your Head. I'm your host, Bob, and today's special guest is Finlay Blake from death metal band Last Retch, who by the time this episode reaches your ears and eyes will have just released a brand new EP entitled Ergotism. He did just tell me how to pronounce it correctly. I might have fucked it up again. Last Retch hail from Hamilton, Ontario, and have been pumping out a tasteful blend of old and new school death metal for the past few years. I was blown away when I stumbled on their last full-length, Sadism and Severed Heads, as it was chock full of catchy grooves and infectious energy. This new EP, however, darkens their sound, as if the blazing fast chugging guitars are chipping away at the soil that's slowly filling up your coffin. I'm making that metaphor to also signal that Finlay is a huge horror fan, so we'll also be chatting about the sadism and severed heads of cinema. So Finlay, thank you for joining me. Apologies for the technical difficulties. How are you doing?
Hey man, thanks for having me. It's cool to be here. I know I got one of your stickers that you were at the Hard Luck show we played with Human Compost and Phantom Crawl, and someone was like, "Hey,
actually, it was
oh, was it?
It was Scorching Tomb and Primal Horde."
Then right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, someone came over and was like, "Finlay, like I know that you like horror movies. Here's a sticker, you should check them out." And so I've been listening to you since, your first episode you put out when
wow,
last year. So it's cool to like kind of come full circle and now be able to like, be on the podcast. So
yeah.
Proud of me.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really flattered about that. Yeah, it was awesome. I think I had just gotten the album a week before that show and loved it. And then seeing you guys did a great job that night. So it was cool to like connect with everybody. And I remember talking to you and giving you a sticker and you were like, "Oh, I'm already listening to it." And I was just like, "What? How do people know about this podcast?" So that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah, the album, it just came out. Ergotism. Is that right? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay, Ergotism. And you were just telling me earlier about the concept behind it. So I don't know if you want to go into detail about it.
Oh, especially with like sadism and severed heads, the generalized themes were kind of like psychedelics. We have like kind of witch, like forest themes. So with ergotism, it like branches out a little bit, but it still keeps on the kind of generalized theme. So ergotism is it's like a fungus that was found in rye grain. And so what it does, it can like create psychosis and like hallucinations and a lot of, intestinal gastro problems. So we bring that with the Salem witch trials. Because back in the 1700s, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us have a general idea of the Salem witch trials.
Totally,
but
yeah.
So the town got the fungus, the ergot was on everything, and it created like a mass hysteria. So those people thought, the women in the town were witches based off this, this poison. So we that, and then we talk about, the shackles that they were put in, or what they would do to like test to see if you were a witch is they'd lie you down and put a board in your stomach, and then they would just put massive stones on it, increase the weight until, you either succumbed and died, or were just, like, "I'm a witch," and in which case it would still kill you anyway. So like that's kind of like the generalized theme of the album.
Okay. It's interesting. I didn't know that because like that sort of ties a bit into your previous album as well. Because that like the cover art had the witch on it, So it seems like a kind of running theme with the band is like witchcraft.
Yeah, it's definitely like an underlying that, and like psychedelics and kind of like hallucinations and psychosis. So like on of ergotism, it's kind of like a metaphor for like the the psychosis and just like the madness that is the poison and the ergotism. Because like fires, there's just people beating the shit out of each other, so it's kind of like an underlying like theme.
Okay, crazy. Yeah. Are you a fan of like movies about witchcraft that like the witch trial movies and stuff? Like have you seen any?
I mean, it's not my go-to.
Okay.
I mean, I appreciate horror in all forms, but like kind of supernatural and witchcraft isn't necessarily my go-to.
Yeah.
Um, it just doesn't do it for me, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I got really into, or I shouldn't say really into, because like there's not many of them, but I love like there's a lot of like cool older ones about more like the sadism of the witch trials, you know, like if you haven't seen it, Witchfinder General with Vincent Price in it is like
okay.
such a sadistic film, you know, like it would be worth checking out because it's basically like a revenge film where this soldier finds out that his fiance was caught by the Witchfinder General Vincent Price, who like tortured and I think killed her because she like what's the word I'm looking for? Like pushed away his advances. Like he was like, "You better sleep with me," and she's like, "No," and he's like,
Okay.
"Well, you're a witch. I'll kill
Yeah,
you."
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
this soldier finds out, and he's like, "What? He did that to my fiance?" And then the whole film is like him trying to find him, Vincent
Okay.
Price, to kill him. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good. Yeah,
Witchfinder General?
Witchfinder General. Yeah, yeah, which I think would tie in with these themes, and maybe your next album can be about like the vengeance of people who are like sick of the witch trials or something,
Hey,
you
there, yeah,
know?
fair.
Yeah. But you mentioned psychedelics quite a bit, which is not something I necessarily would have picked up on. Like I you know, I don't think there's like a lyric sheet with the music or anything. So I wasn't really able to pick up on that, but the music itself is pretty like pummeling and not super like trippy or anything. So
That's
oh yeah, go ahead.
no, no, no. Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of like it's again, it's not kind of like in your face thematically with the lyrics.
Mm,
There's especially with sadism, like the overarching like kind of story we were trying to interweave. Not that it's a concept album per se, but
hmm
like the idea of you took psychedelics in this like weird forest and you're being, you know, followed by this like forest hag, kind of like a very fucked up and twisted like Hansel and Gretel on like mushrooms or
mm.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it doesn't, it's not like a narrative. It kind of just, each song is their own and each doesn't necessarily connect, but it's kind of like an overarching vibe that we were going for.
Okay. Yeah, sort of like like a central like imagery. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you want
that's
someone to picture this while they're listening to the music.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So can I ask, like, have you done psychedelics before?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, that's our,
okay, okay.
especially, well, we started Last Retch. Um, so a little bit of a backstory.
Oh, please, yeah.
Myself, John, and Derek, the guitar player,
hmm
we've been in, like, we grew up together in elementary school. So we've
hmm
effectively been in a band together since I was in grade 8. So 2006.
Wow.
Like we were recording shitty demos on like a cassette player in my parents' like
Yeah.
loft. So
Mm.
we effectively like have always been in a band growing up, and this is the one that kind of like we started actively taking serious. But we started this during pandemic, and
Okay.
we all lived in a house together. So what else to do? We found a mushroom website on
Okay.
called buymushroomsonline.ca. So yeah,
Okay.
so started dabbling quite heavily, and it was
Yeah.
just, you know, between doing that, playing NHL on fucking Xbox, and, you know, drinking too much. That was kind of
Yeah.
our like, along with like writing sick riffs and kind of trying to get this band progressing. So we
Yeah.
have dabbled, and then yeah, acid's also been like a,
Okay.
it's great to do. So we're quite heavily invested in the psychedelic experience, if you will.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm not like totally surprised, you know, like death metal definitely brings out like a certain level of partying in people, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's funny because like you said the website was it buy mushrooms online. Be,
Buy.ca.
okay, because before it was legalized, I used to get weed online from a website called buymyweedonline.com. So it's like like you could just stumble on that stuff. Do you know what I mean? You could go like, I need to buy these things. I'll just like maybe if I just look up this, you know what I'm saying? Like you could just like easily find that.
100%. type it into the Google machine, like you got it.
Right. Yeah. So you guys have been playing in bands together since you said 2006?
Yeah, so I would have been John's a year or two older, and then
Okay.
Derek uh two years younger. So
Oh,
yeah, we
okay.
were in entry school, like starting to just try to mess around and jam. I mean, granted, obviously it was terrible because
Oh,
we
it
didn't
has
know
it
what we
has
were
to
doing.
be.
It's got to start somewhere, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
Were
for
you
a
guys
while
playing death metal right from the start?
we were. I couldn't even call it. It was just metal. We weren't like cemented in anything. We were just trying to play stuff we thought was heavy because like at that time we were listening to like I think the first or Ascendancy by Trivium came out, or like
Okay.
Ashes Wake, was it Ashes the Wake or Sacrament had just come out. So like we were basically effectively getting our like training wheels in metal. So that was
Okay.
our starting point. It was like thrash, heavy metal stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
So basic, like it doesn't even really have like a genre to it.
Sure.
But
No, I can get that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting, and like maybe I'm jumping a bit here, but when I listened to the new EP, the title track, I'm gonna try to get Ergotism.
yeah.
Okay. It reminded me actually of I don't know if you're a fan of the band Converge.
It's all like I have one of their albums, but it's not something that like
Okay.
I dive into kind of thing.
Well, they're like, considered best album. Jane Doe, the final song, Jane Doe, is like this really long, slower song. And listening to Ergotism, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Jane Doe. And I mean that in the best possible way. Like that album
That
is like a top 10 album for me. So
yeah. So this album was kind of or EP. It's kind of like a slightly all over the place kind of deal because like we've never really
okay.
with like a slow song like that, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I wouldn't came out of our comfort zone, but we're
Mm,
definitely to like put out a little bit more feelers, kind of like that Gatecreeper album where like each song was kind of like
mm.
a different genre of metal. Not to say it's the same in any way, but like kinda, like we
Yeah.
Scalped is punishing, like um Ergotism is kind of slow, and then with the other two are kind of like in between.
Mm. Yeah, I kind of found like listening to it and then going back to the first one that yeah, there's definitely like more changes in tempo and styles, but there's sort of more of like a core like dark feel. And it felt like the first album was a lot more like colorful in a lot of ways, like more almost like upbeat,
Yeah, yeah.
like more like
It was
happier.
yeah. Yeah, this one's a lot more punishing, a lot more bleak, a lot more dark.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like to it.
Right. Was that
Uh,
something that you guys were like you talked about going into writing the album?
so our writing style is, I mean, like a lot of bands, there's usually like a driving force behind it, and
Mm,
that's John. So he's kind of like the visionary, so he brings to the table a lot of like his influences. So usually we kind of like work with that.
right.
But yeah, he's usually the visionary. So like he brought that to the plate and we just kind of ran with it,
Yeah.
and uh and it worked out. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So sorry, you said John is like the key songwriter?
Yeah, he is like he'll get upset with me saying this, but like he is and but right, like a lot of bands have that similar what's the word I'm looking for, like synergy.
Mm,
Like usually there's one or two driving forces behind a band that kind of
mm-hmm.
uh, keep everyone on their toes, is like a driving force behind it. So like Derek will
He's the band leader.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the front man, but he's the guy.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh no, 100%. So we work a lot around him, but he's also, I mean, he's incredible, incredibly
Yeah.
talented. Like he knows how to write music.
Right, right.
He's versatile. So he's the ideas guy.
Hmm. But why would he be upset for you saying that?
Well, because we have this thing because we always call him like Papa John or like, and we
Wait, what
we
does that
just
mean?
we make jokes because like he wants it to be a democracy, which it
Okay.
is, but
Yeah.
like he driving force, and like we poke fun of him for that, but he knows it's all in jest, and like there's
Hmm.
always got to be the guy that takes the reins, right? Or else
Oh
that's how
yeah.
bands start.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
important to realize that not only as a leader but as the band, because
Mm.
again, like I said, that's how bands break up. It's like, oh well, you're taking all the creative control, which
Right.
isn't, which it doesn't happen, but like those sorts of situations can really cause, a rift in bands. So it's
Mm.
like realize that.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with that because like if you guys started playing in bands together from 2006 and we're now 2024, was it wait, is that 18 years?
That's almost 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So I obviously then Last Retch didn't start in 2006 and you guys must have had like all these different kind of bands over the years. And so you must have seen them kind of like implode because of what you're talking about.
100%. And usually it was the drummer and the guitar player, right? They always butt heads because like, I have a better idea.
Ah,
Like, no, you have a better idea. And then it becomes a whole shitstorm. That's actually
wow.
what's happened to Last Retch. We were in another band called Murder,
Hmm.
and just classic band drama happened. So that band Murder collapsed, and then at the same time, Last Retch was starting to get formed. So as
Mm.
the band dropped, Last Retch happened, and then it kind of just progressed from there.
Wait, so who is in Murder that's in Last Retch?
It
Like
was
I'm guessing you and then
me, John, and then Derek, our rhythm
Derek.
guitar
Okay.
player.
Okay.
Those three staples for since time.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
and then it's basically you just have to find a drummer and bassist. Wait, so wait. I saw you guys with the drummer. What happened to them? If you don't mind me asking.
So that's Davis. So he's full time. He produced the EP. He's
Oh.
produced the last with Sadism and Severed Heads. He produced our demo, and he actually even produced the Murder album.
Oh,
But he
cool.
does full time. He's also in like 1,000 other bands.
Oh,
So
okay.
and then he records full time. So it's
Yeah.
just not feasible for him to like also do this. Having said that, he is playing drums on our albums, which
Okay.
is sick because he is incredible. Finding a drummer is the fucking goddamn most difficult task. Like guitar player,
Yeah.
dime a dozen. Everybody plays guitar, but finding especially death metal, right? Like you need
Yeah.
a sick drummer. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much in case it like implodes by the time this episode comes out, but like I was mentioning to you, I've been trying to get a band going,
yeah.
and it's actually been more like the opposite situation where I have a drummer and he's been really dedicated. And so it's been like him and I as like the core two people. And then we've been slowly trying to get other people on board. And we have a bassist, but we've been slowly working him into the mix. So it's everyone keeps telling me like, don't give up, man. You've got the drummer. You've got the drummer. You know?
Yeah, that's like a Cinderella story, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
because yeah, you mentioned uh is it Hassan?
Oh yeah, Hassan. Yeah,
From,
yeah,
from
yeah.
his, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's
Yeah.
sick.
He's great. He's
Yeah.
like he's basically exactly what you need for death metal. In fact, I mean, if the fact with you guys being in Hamilton might be tough for him to make it work, but if I told him you're looking for a drummer, I could see him being like, I should add a seventh band to my like agenda because he's in
Well,
so many bands.
yeah, I mean, he's sick because we're doing
Yeah.
sorry, like Azab is Pakistani, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And because they're doing like a Ontario kind of East Coasty run.
Yeah.
We're playing a couple shows with them in May.
Hmm.
We were pretty excited to get that offer because like I mean it's just super cool, right?
Yeah, yeah. I haven't had a chance to listen to much of their music, but Hassan said it's super complex, like that real like techie,
Oh
brutal
yeah,
death metal stuff.
very tech, super polished,
Mm,
really tight. Like it's
yeah.
gonna it's gonna be fun to play with though.
Nice. I mean I like that kind of stuff, but I kind of prefer the more of the like raw, like kind of more old school sounding stuff. I think more of on the lines of what you guys do, and like I remember listening to John's interview with the Metal Art YouTube channel. But he was
Yeah.
talking about like how all your influences are like Entombed, Cannibal Corpse, all that kind of stuff. And so it seems like you guys are kind of harking back to that old school death metal sound, which seems to be kind of like getting really big right now.
Well, there's definitely been like a massive resurgence of old school death metal, especially within like the last 10, but I would say even like 5 years or so. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like they're just pumping them out, which isn't a bad thing, but like
No.
I, sometimes when, because history repeats itself, right? So sometimes there can
Hmm.
be oversaturation of bands in one genre,
Yeah.
which again, not isn't always a bad thing, but like just it can get diluted occasionally, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. But I think for me, what I like about it is it almost sounds like a lot of these bands are sort of picking up where the 90s death metal, early 90s death metal sound
Yeah,
left off, because I don't know, like I find a lot of stuff 2000s onwards, I'm really picky about. And like I'm not a huge fan of like when the kick sounds so like digital, like
like
you know what I
that
mean? There's
aggressive triggered, like,
yeah,
really, yeah. Well,
and oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, especially with um like old school death metal, it's nice when the kick drum kind of bleeds into like the music as a whole, as opposed to
Yeah.
like as opposed to being ultra aware of like, oh, that's the kick drum. When it kind of gets, I don't want to use the word muddled, but it just brings like an atmosphere and kind of brings the rest of the riffs and the music together as like background,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
very, noticed.
Well, it's almost like the new kind of newer style is like a machine gun on top of everything. Whereas like the older stuff was like, okay, we're going fast and it drives everything forward,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I think happens with what you're talking about of like the kick drum bleeding so well with everything else.
yeah,
And it's just
100%.
that it the older stuff sounds like the drummer's like, I'm dying, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Whereas like new stuff, it just sounds like a robot.
that's fair. It's
Yeah.
inhuman. Well, and it's just such a different atmosphere. I mean, especially with old school death metal, it feels, I don't even know how to put it, but there's a lot more feel. Like death metal
Mm,
is such a great culture. And not to
mm.
say, not excluding metal, because like
Yeah,
that's gatekeeping anything.
right.
But I mean, just the entire drive, the entire culture, the entire feel of death metal is just so. I mean, it fucking rules. Death metal rules.
Yeah. Is there like a death metal scene in Hamilton?
To be honest, not particularly. Like
Oh,
I don't
okay.
own horn, but I would say that we are the probably. There's a sick band called Consuming Misery.
Okay.
Uh, bunch of young bucks. They just put out a demo called, I think it's called Organ Rot.
Ooh,
Uh,
nice.
and it's fucking, and they're like 20, 19, 18.
Wow,
So
okay.
they're like coming out, and it's sick. Like it's
Okay.
really good. But between that, I mean, I guess my other band, Mortuary Slab, would be tucked
Right,
in.
yeah.
Shout them out. But
Yeah.
Hamilton's a really big hardcore scene. Uh,
Right,
like
yeah.
driving, that's the driving like music, I would say, within the like heavy community. A lot of
Mm,
hardcore, some great hardcore, mind you, but we can find it tough to get a bill in Hamilton that doesn't include hardcore. Uh,
mm.
Again, not a bad thing, but I mean, there's always been that historic beef between death metal and hardcore.
Hmm.
So it is nice playing with hardcore bands because their kids have a lot of great energy.
Yeah.
It's difficult to find like an all death metal bill from Hamilton.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean maybe I'm kind of in this small subset of people that like that's kind of up my alley, you know? Like I love how there is sort of this like crossover of death metal and hardcore right now. So I wouldn't hate going to a show where I'm like, oh, there's like a hardcore band and then there's a death metal band and it goes back and forth. But I guess I can see for you where it's like am I not getting the as many fans as I could? Am I not reaching out to like as many death metal heads? Are they getting scared off because they really don't like hardcore, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Because, and I
Yeah.
mean, again, you can draw like if you're gonna play with hardcore bands, you'll get a good crowd, but not
Mm,
necessarily for the death metal bands, right?
right, right. Okay.
Like, oh, I'm gonna go smoke or like let's go grab a beer, and they're not actively engaged.
Mm,
But having said that, I mean, especially now with labels like Maggot Stomp,
mm,
band metal bands are kind of crossing over like with the hardcore death metal. So
yeah,
you still have those crunchy chugs, those breakdowns, those two step riffs.
yeah.
So it's like a double-edged sword. Now these bands are getting the hardcore kids and the death metal kids and like slapping it together, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Do you think do you think I'm just kind of throwing this out here, but do you think that like old school death metal sounds more like hardcore than say like the newer style of death metal?
I definitely think there's an argument for that. I mean,
Hmm.
bands like Sepultura, even Entombed and stuff, they
Yeah.
definitely have influences from hardcore, 100%.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think like the breakdowns would be a big indication of it, you know?
yeah,
Like
yeah, those
Suffocation had those kind of like hardcore breakdowns.
100%.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you heard about like Dying Fetus played a hardcore festival recently.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I think it was like FYA, like I think it's Fuck Your Attitude Fest or something. I think
Yeah,
that's what it's
okay,
called.
okay. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
again, it bridges that gap because they have like the tech shred parts, but then they have the like
Yeah,
the
yeah. Yeah, they have like well, I think I heard an interview with them where they said that they kept their set list to like just the hardcore leaning stuff. And I think they said a couple times they tried to play more like death metal Ford songs and they noticed like people would slow down in the pit. And they said like, oh, it's not like anyone disliked that, but you can't really dance to it as much, you know?
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mm. Yeah, and it makes me think of ergotism. That's it, right? Ergotism.
Yeah,
Okay. Listening to it, I kind of got this sense that the album was maybe more like written more from playing the songs live or like sculpted more from playing the songs live versus like the last one. Like maybe you guys got more of a feel of like how they work live in terms of like getting the energy going in the venue and stuff.
yeah. I don't know if we like consciously did that, but
Okay.
there's definitely times where like we have that one song fleshed out in Sadism, where when we were written it, there's a couple sections where we were actively like, the hardcore kids are gonna fucking eat this up.
Yeah, yeah.
But consciously added sections in the EP to kind of fit that mold, but I don't know if it was like explicitly discussed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I get that. I mean, it kind of makes sense that you guys have been playing together since 2006, that you wouldn't really need to have discussions about these things. Like you guys are all kind of locked in more or less, you know, like with your
Yes,
tastes and
yeah,
things.
and no, because especially with the the evolution and like the like progression of where we started musically, and
Hmm.
like a lot of times everyone in the band has their own like core. Like I love old school death metal, but I
Okay.
wouldn't say necessarily my core.
Oh, okay.
We like when each of us like progressed and we're evolving and we're getting into different types of music, again, because John's always kind of been like the leader, so we've always kind of followed stylistically like his vision. We usually bring our own kind of flares from our core genres, but usually we're following John's direction. And then the stuff that we do bring in, we like to call like, we'll bring something in and then we'll retrify it. So it could be like a thrash riff that if we half time it and do like a deep beat, we can make it worth. So like we are bringing in these different ideas, but at the end of the day, it goes through like the Last Retch processor, and then it becomes stylistically what we are doing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense though, especially with you guys being so like indebted to old school death metal, because from what I understand, like death metal when it started was born out of thrash, of like taking thrash and saying like let's push it in this direction. So it only makes sense then that if you were a death metal band back in the early 90s, late 80s, you would be pulling from thrash, from doom metal, from maybe even hardcore, you know what I mean? And just saying like, well, let's put it in this direction. So that makes sense to me in a way, like if I look at it in terms of that, But as you said, like death metal is not even really your core. Like what would you say is kind of your go? If you had a dream band, what style would it be?
So my dream, like I'm not embarrassed to say it, but like I'm
Don't be.
really big into slam, which I
Oh,
mean,
okay, yeah.
when you core that down, it's basically hardcore with tremolos and the most disgusting vocals you can get. But like when
Right.
I'm music, like don't get me wrong, I love all that stuff. Like, I mean, Corpse is my favorite band because that got me into doing
Yeah.
vocal. But I'm always looking, again, as a vocalist, looking for like the most disgusting, harsh, vile, just undiscernible or
Yeah.
indiscernible vocals you can find. So like that's why I
Yeah.
find myself listening to a lot of slam.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, why are you embarrassed about it?
Well, because like, I mean, slam's kind of a joke. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because like they're trying to push that that envelope, that they're trying to push like what death metal was trying to do in the 90s, but like to a new level now with like how ridiculous can the vocals be, or like all the
Right.
riffs be the same.
Yeah,
um
yeah. There's
so I mean,
there's something about it. And I think about this. Okay. Were you a Simpsons fan at all growing up? Like, did you watch The Simpsons?
yeah, yeah, like not
Okay.
really, but like
Okay, this is do you remember there's an episode where Bart and Milhouse go to the Quickie Mart and I think they find like a $20 bill on the ground and they ask for a Slurpee that is just syrup, and it's like this like super thick liquid and they drink it and then they like trip out basically. And I think about that image a lot with when I encounter things like say slam, where it's like slam is sort of like saying I'm gonna get death metal, but I'm gonna get like it's like if it was a Slurpee, just the syrup. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like just give me this and then that's it, just stretched out,
yeah,
like, would you say that's kind of accurate or?
I would say that it's like if you could even core down meat and potatoes less than
Okay.
meat and potatoes,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah. Okay, like
um
but if you took like a burger and fries and then threw away the bun and toppings and it was just like the patty and the fries like mushed
yeah,
together or
just
slammed on your head, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
The grease dripping down
yeah,
into your eye, stinging you, and you're screaming in pain, yeah.
yeah.
Are you a fan of Peeling Flesh?
Oh, dude, one of my favorite songs they do, G Check. I
G-Check?
G Check. I think that might be a split with Snuffed on Sight, but
Okay.
Snuffed on Sight is more hardcore. But like
Mm-hmm.
his vocals are so fucking wild. Like I will
Yeah.
listen to him over and over to be like, how? What is he doing with his tongue? It's
Right,
like
right.
alien fucking trash compactor vocals. Like I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah. So for you as a vocalist, you're getting inspiration from that.
Yeah, 100%. But then,
Okay.
but then inspiration on like how to do it, but that vocal style isn't necessarily conducive with like what Last Retch is doing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
for example, like Ergotism is a lot more strictly death metal vocals,
Mm-hmm.
as the sadism, where I was kind of reaching out more with some of the brutal death metal, like tongue positions and
Okay.
like the gurgles and stuff. So like this vision is a lot more just, again, like meat and potatoes, death metal, lows and highs kind of thing.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Taking a lot of inspiration from Corpse Grinder, I'm guessing, because you mentioned Cannibal Corpse being like a big
Yeah.
favorite for you.
Well, he's the one that got me into being a vocalist.
Okay.
Because so originally, again, going back to 2006, I played drums,
Oh,
not well anyway. Yeah.
okay.
I grade 7, so like just stiff and like didn't know what I was doing.
Sure, sure.
John was a year ahead of me. They started a band when they were in grade 9, and I was yeah, in grade 8. Anyway, the timeline doesn't matter there.
Hmm.
But I couldn't play an instrument well enough to be in a band, so I
Hmm.
basically built myself to learn how to scream,
Oh, okay.
and then yeah, so it was like strictly I want to be in another band, but I don't play an instrument well enough. What
Hmm.
can I do? So I think I was 14 when I started to learn how to scream, and then just kind of progressed
Oh,
from there.
wow.
Like Corpse Grinder was I remember hearing Cannibal Corpse for the first time, be like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely like the gold standard, I'd say, for stamina, for volume, and also dynamic, I think.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, like he's,
It's,
you know,
it's dynamic in a weird, like static kind of way. If
oh, okay. Okay.
well, because like
Yeah.
his range isn't necessarily broad, but like what he
Mm,
does in the two, like low high, is
yeah,
like
that's true. Yeah, I mean, would you say that is there a vocalist that you could think of that is kind of like the best when it comes to dynamic? Because it does seem like that's sort of a common thing with death metal is like very one note vocals, you know?
yeah. I mean, I really like. Um, Again, I'm really bad with names, so I'm just gonna do
Oh,
bands.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Like,
I'd be the same way.
do you know Maul?
How do you spell it?
Maul.
No, no, I
The
don't know
vocalist,
him.
he's pretty sick. He's got a
Okay.
really good, or like Travis Ryan from like Cattle to Cab.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
he's range is incredible.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
or like Infinite Annihilator. Phil Bosman from Whitechapel's got incredible range, although
Okay,
kind of like fell off the deep end a little bit.
yeah,
Uh, but I think those are some of the bands that have like a decent, like
yeah.
those sing and do anything in between with death metal vocals kind of deal.
Hmm. I'd say like a lot of the newer deathcore bands, I'll check out their stuff because the vocals are so innovative. They're so just like next level and impressive. It's just a shame I can't really get into the music that much, but
Well,
like the
it's
vocals are incredible.
they're incredible, but at the same time now, especially with bands like Infinite Annihilator or what's the other one that everyone like
Lorna,
Lorna.
Lorna Shore,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But now again, the music, the deathcore now, again, I don't listen to a lot of deathcore now because I feel like deathcore
Mhm.
peaked in like 2008.
Oh
Uh,
wow, okay.
it's
It's still going, so
dated myself, but a lot of them are like it's very like it's hard to. I mean, again, you can make this argument about death metal or whatever, but I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the vocalists now are trying to emulate people like Will Ramos from Lorna
Oh,
Shore, but like
okay.
too much that
Mm.
really hard to kind of make the connection between different bands, and especially with not a lot of riffs going on in deathcore, which I mean
Oh yeah.
that's fine, but like you can only slow a breakdown to such a point, right?
Hmm.
I don't want 3 seconds in between notes just to be heavy.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's something that like it definitely keeps me away from deathcore and maybe a lot of modern death metal, which brings me back to the old school death metal style. Is that like the riffs are so imaginative and wild, and like again, I can hear that in what you guys do, with John and Derek. Like I remember seeing when I saw you guys at the Hard Luck, just being like, what? Like both guitarists are like lead guitarists. Like, what the hell's going on? They're just fucking killing it.
They're gonna love that. They're gonna love that.
That's good. That's good, and it's inspiring to see, it just for me being like, okay, I need to definitely work a lot harder on playing guitar and everything. So yeah.
So on that note, I'm gonna ask you a question. Let me interview
Yeah,
you. So
sure.
like
Okay.
what kind of like what's your vision like musically or sonically for your project? Like what are your inspirations gonna be?
Um, I mean, like it's funny because I spent like a year writing some demos and just kind of like whittling them down. And it honestly just started out being like, oh, I'm going to like more hardcore shows. I want to write some hardcore songs. Oh, I'm starting to listen to more death metal again. I'm gonna put death metal riffs in these songs. And then by the end of the year, just the songs were 100% death metal.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? And like I also like this is gonna kind of a weird thing, but I mean, not really, but for the past 10 years up until a year ago, I was actually doing electronic music, like
Oh,
I was making like dance music and stuff.
oh, sick.
Yeah, and then but before that, I had a post-hardcore band for a few years, and then before that, I was doing noise, and in high school, I played ska punk. So I've kind of just done everything, and I'm just now like, oh, I'm gonna get back into playing guitar again and do death metal because I just feel like doing that. Um, so the vision for this band, I mean, Cannibal Corpse has been like the biggest influence for me for sure. Their songwriting has just been like mind blowing. And there's just been a lot of weird touchstones, like specific albums I've been finding that have been influencing me. There's a good chance that our vocalist, a friend of mine, wants to try out, but they don't do like kind of the gurgle like Cookie Monster vocals. They're more of like I would say more of like a shriek. And actually, I'm kind of intrigued about trying that out. Like, I don't know, like, I love that kind of vocal, but it's not always my favorite thing about death metal. Like for me, it's always about the riffs. Um, but yeah, just trying to do like Suffocation, Cannibal Corpse, those have been big influences. There's this one album that like anyone I've talked to doesn't know it, and it's been a huge influence for me. You should check it out after the interview. But the band's called Mangled, and the album is called Human Waste Department, I think.
Okay. That's a band that I've always, I've seen the name, but
Okay.
but like never. I mean, there's so many bands like taking the
Oh
time to.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's called Human Waste Department.
I think that's what it's called. And it's
Okay.
I think they're from the Netherlands and the album came out around 2008, 2009 or maybe earlier. And so
Okay.
the vocals are kind of not that low, but the guitar riffs are incredible. And I feel like I've never heard death metal done that way. I mean, maybe you might not consider it like 100% death metal. I don't know, but it's just been
Okay.
a huge influence for me. So
That's
yeah.
sick. Well, as much as like, yeah, I do love vocals and like, especially with slam, seek out the heaviest and the most brutal.
Yeah,
To be honest, vocals are usually like a bonus to the music. Like you
for
can
sure.
have a sick band with not a great vocalist, but that's not going to
Mhm.
necessarily deter, well, me personally, from listening to that band because like
Yeah,
it's about the riffs, like it's
totally.
about the music, and like having a good vocalist or good vocal patterns or whatever is just kind of like a bonus. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I get that. I think it's more when I try to get friends into death metal bands that are like kind of on the fence about it, and 100% of the time they're just like, dude, I love the music. It's just the vocals when they come in, I'm like, I don't know what to do, you know? So I'm just like, okay, I'll keep showing you stuff. Maybe you'll warm up to this, or maybe you'll warm up to that, you know? But it's like
Yeah,
death metal vocals are definitely the most inaccessible vocals. And that's a part of the appeal. I mean, death metal
yeah,
is kind of like that in general. It's like it is the most extreme form of metal, I would say.
10,000%. I mean,
Yeah.
even for me as a vocalist now, listening, like I grew up on like ACDC was my favorite band,
Oh,
and
okay.
John kind of like got me into metal. But listening to some of those bands, be like, I can't. Why is he yelling? Like,
Right, right.
in,
Yeah.
and then it comes full circle, and now
Mm.
it's 100% inaccessible.
Yeah. I think for me, like I grew up more into punk and hardcore. And so it wasn't like getting into metal vocals. There's something different about it because I think with hardcore vocals, you can hear like such clear anger and rage. And with metal vocals, it's almost like coming from a different place.
100%. I've always felt that the punk and hardcore vocals are like they're harder.
Hmm.
Like
Okay.
that's like what you just said. Like that's full anger. Like they're yelling at me. They're angry.
Yeah.
So I've almost felt like that was harder, not harder to listen to, but it brings like a harder edge because like
Hmm.
they're yelling at me. Like that is anger. That
Right.
is like violence. That is just aggression.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think with death metal, like it's interesting because it's such an extreme form of music, but when I listen to it, I don't always get like some kind of emotional release. And so I think I've always enjoyed it, but it's only been in the past couple of years that I've really kind of realized the magic of it comes from something else. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, right? Because then you have to go back to the history of hardcore and punk.
Yeah.
Their counterculture like paved the way so that
Mm.
metal could, I mean, when metal came around, like yeah, they were fighting with the punks and stuff, but that counterculture had already been placed. Like you're not really
Yeah.
necessarily rebelling against the man as much as punk and thrash, or sorry, punk and hardcore were.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the the fuck you man, or like the rebellion was kind of it definitely didn't match when death metal started out, the same kind of vibe that the early punk and hardcore had, right?
Mm. Yeah, I think that maybe though that's sort of like an untapped potential with metal or death metal where like, you know, because when you mentioned the the themes of the album having to do with like the Salem witch trials, for me it does kind of bring about like a political quality. Do you know what I mean? Like I think the way now we look back at the Salem witch trials isn't very much a like, oh, that was a lot of corruption. Like, I can't believe how like you know, oppressive and sexist and like terrifying that period was. Do you know what I mean? There's like it's sort of like I don't know, like I don't want to put set you guys up to say something that you're not, but there is sort of like a political message maybe behind that.
I would say that's fair, kind of with the entire, especially not the new direction, but like what we're
Okay.
putting out. I wouldn't call it like political or trying to have like a real message,
Mm-hmm.
but because we kind of recently moved to Hamilton, so,
Oh.
so some of our newer stuff is more representative of like the injustices
Mm.
and qualities that we see in what is happening, with like the drug addiction, like the home,
Right.
like the fellow man, all the stuff related to society kind of thing, especially in
Yeah.
our that is that we're in the process of writing. We've definitely taken a more, again, like I don't want to say humanitarian approach, but more like
Mm.
applicable, you know, um,
Mm-hmm.
ideas kind of deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's something like for me, like I live in downtown Toronto, like I live pretty close to the Eaton Center. And so
Okay.
I see a lot of homeless people like yeah, a couple of weeks ago I saw someone overdosing and there was a construction worker calling up an ambulance coming around the corner. I see a lot of stuff like that, and it's hard not to like sort of absorb that because it's what I see when I walk to work. And you were asking me earlier about the vision of the band and thinking like a lot of times like I'm listening to death metal as I'm walking past,
Yeah.
seeing that. So it's hard not to kind of connect those
Yeah. Yeah.
dots in a weird way. So
That's fair. 100%. Actually,
yeah.
on your seen someone overdose that just because I carry naloxone on me, just because
Oh, good, good.
you never know. But I had to actually reverse an overdose. I don't know, 3 weeks ago.
Oh shit.
Well, I'm a really nice guy, so like
Hmm.
if people are you know super fucked up, like I'll go poke them to make sure they're not like dead kind of deal.
Yeah.
I was clearly like the classic spit everywhere foaming, but yeah, I had to
Oh
give them the
shit.
get up. Granted, that's a very risky move because as soon
Hmm.
as you do that, they go into like, you have just reversed my high and now I'm angry at you. So you have to do that like step
Yeah.
back, fucking piece it. But I firmly believe that I saved the dude's life.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. Well, it's not funny you say that, but one of my good friends is a social worker and he was telling me about that like it's more often than not, it's almost like when you're doing those drugs, you actually want to overdose because getting to that point where you're overdosing is like the greatest high.
Yeah.
So if, as you said, like if you use a naloxone on them and they're coming out of it, they're like,
You,
no, wait, it felt really
you
good.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so heavy.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Well,
you oh, go
sorry,
ahead.
just like watching other people just be actively like 100% desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Because look, guys, they don't want to be there. Like that's not a
No.
state that anyone chooses.
Yeah.
Like right now in Hamilton, they have an encampment set up in front of town hall, and
Okay.
everyone's out of arms. It's like, no, that's a statement. Like that's a power move. They're trying to. If you want them out of the parks, if you want them to like not be in your vicinity, then you're gonna have to support social systems. Like that's
Yeah.
gonna fucking do. And then people
Yeah.
get bent out of shape about it. It's like, well, you can't have it fucking both ways, right?
No. No. It's like a selfish mentality, I think that people just, they only are concerned with themselves and the
Yeah,
quality of their life and like, well, my life is going okay, so I don't want anything else to inconvenience me. And yeah,
yeah.
it's bullshit. You said you moved to Hamilton from somewhere else?
Yeah, so we're all from Grimsby, just
Hmm.
like
Okay.
Niagara-esque region.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, we lived in a house in St. Catharines, and then it'd be three 3 years ago now, roughly. We
Okay.
uh we all moved to Hamilton because
Wow.
we got booted from the house. John came here first, and then to kind of keep the band localized, we all moved around. So John lived with his girlfriend. I lived in with Derek, the other guitar player,
Yeah.
and as of right now, I live just down the road from Derek and live just down the street from John. So it's still,
Okay.
so it's yeah.
Sweet, sweet. What, like, why Hamilton?
Um, it was cheap.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
Yeah.
that's like the reason, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of like an in between step because you can still get to Niagara. Toronto isn't it's a skip and a hop away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
between area, but mostly it was just because it was the most affordable, right? Because like the housing and rent crisis now is absolutely off the chain.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Like I grew up in Newmarket and moved to
Okay.
Toronto in 2008. And so I've kind of watched as the rent has just steadily climbed.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah, my wife and I were in a really nice place for 8 years, and then 2 days before our wedding, we got a message saying that our building was getting sold, and then we ended up getting rent evicted, and now we pay twice as
Oh,
much in rent. So yeah, yeah, it's been interesting, but you just take that and you feed it back into your art.
yeah. That's yeah. I mean, that's fair. I think they just put in some new rules about rent evictions recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
possibly. I don't know. I was like
'cause-
studying all that stuff when it was happening, and then now that we live in a place and we're happy here, I'm just like, I don't want to think about it
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. I think because like a lot of greasy stuff was happening with that, so they
Yeah.
started imposing some laws. So like, oh, we have to redo the cupboards and also get the fuck out.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's a
because
lot of
there's a
interesting rules with it. And it
yeah,
seems like it seems like a situation where if you want to fight it, you really can, but then it's a matter of like, are you like you then have to live in a place with a landlord that you hate. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I don't know. That was something that was kind of like weighing on us was like we could try to fight it, but right now we are already so miserable living here. Like we might as well just get a fresh start somewhere.
yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
100.
Yeah. But I feel like we should move to horror movies if you're
That's
cool to
fair.
do
Yeah,
that.
tangent there.
What's that?
So we got off on a little tangent there,
Well,
kind
you
of
know,
skewed from the.
it's all
It all
good. It's
comes
all
back.
good. It's
Yeah,
all good
yeah,
conversation. So you're
yeah. No,
wearing
it's
an effed up movies.com
oh yeah,
shirt.
no
Uh
doubt.
so I take it you watch a lot of effed up movies then.
That yeah, well, I mean, it's like the holy grail of extreme cinema, right?
Right, right.
Uh,
Yeah. So I was mentioning this to you before we started like I'm really interested in how people end up in extreme cinema, like how they start watching, like Poltergeist or something and then the years go on. So for you, like what was the first few horror movies you were watching that really like blew you away when you were a kid?
so I
Or if
used
you
to,
got into it later.
yeah, I would have been probably 8 or 9, maybe 10,
Okay.
and a good and Max Dencham. His mom really liked horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
So like we would have sleepovers almost every weekend, and like by proxy would get exposed to some of these horror movies. So the first two horror movies I ever saw were Killer Clowns from Outer Space,
Oh, I
and
love that.
but
Okay.
kind of young enough that like it didn't really hit home because like I was
Sure.
also like hanging with friends, so I wasn't fully invested in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that kind of sparked my interest. And then I remember I think Freddy vs. Jason came out 2003, roughly.
Yeah, I think so.
So
Yeah.
that was the first horror movie I went out on my own. Well, got my parents to rent for me and watched
Hmm.
in my bedroom. And I don't think I got past the first scene, which is like this doll burning on like a grate or something.
Okay.
And where I had, nightmares for weeks and had to sleep in bed at 10. So
Wow. Okay.
that was the starting point. And then another thing I remember was John. We used to walk to school to every day, and he explained the plot as we were walking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and like that gave me nightmares too. So like
Totally.
my point with horror wasn't from a place of like, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
after that, just kind of threw myself in. So,
Yeah.
with the hostels and with the and like I just full jump with the saws and stuff.
Okay.
And then, so around that point, we were kind of getting into high school. So we
Hmm.
were like, me specifically was like really kind of branching out to horror movie. And then that started with like, I'm sure Best Gore.
No, what is it?
That it was that like shock gore site back in the
Oh,
2000s
okay. Is it kind of
run
like
by that.
it's like rotten.com kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like ashes and fucking, beheadings and stuff.
Oh
So
God.
when kind of yeah, like the cartel flames and the beheadings,
Right,
and then
right.
into that's kind of makes you feel a little icky because it's like that's real.
Yeah.
So that brought me into like the more extreme
Hmm.
cinema. So
Okay.
I mean, we're chronologically, yeah, like the Saws, the Hostels, those were the first
Hmm.
tip of the iceberg, and then you get into the really obscure stuff like the undergrounds and all like the faux like sunken Danish and all like the faux snuff kind of deals.
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost like you wanted the feeling that you were getting from Best Gore, but without the fact that it's like a real clip of gore. Like it's like,
Yeah,
oh, it's the fictional version of that.
yeah, without that stomach of like, oh, that's like the guy had a family, like that was a real dude.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and then now looking back, it's like I can't watch that stuff anymore because it's like that's super off-putting. But
Right,
when
yeah.
you know that it's fictional, it goes extreme as I'm always looking out for like the most depraved, the most extreme, the most taboo that you can stomach.
Right. Has there been anything, or at least recently that you were like, oh, this is too much, you had to stop it or something?
Uh, Not so much entire movies, but
Okay.
like some of the themes, like
Sure.
I, you've seen Trauma, yeah?
Trauma. Which one's okay, I don't think I have. Okay, like I know there's like a Dario Argento early 90s trauma, and then I think there's a trauma from like the 2010s. Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
that one. It's
Okay.
like, well, Cole's notes. So I mean, the opening scene is, I think it's like World War II or something,
Okay.
and this young boy is like forced to have. He's given like an amphetamine and like forced to have sex with his mom.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Or like some of so like those taboos kind of that's where I don't like, but it's not like it's going to prevent me from still climbing down that rabbit hole. Like
Sure.
the end of Serbian film, like that
Right. Yeah, yeah.
stuff is kind of where I would draw the line if it's an entire movie about that. Probably
Sure,
I
sure.
would probably still watch it, but like that's where it's like, ooh, that's where it really gets you. Ooh,
Yeah, it almost feels like less shocking and more like uncomfortable in a way that um just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know about this. Like, am I kind of crossing a line that I shouldn't or something, you
that
know?
that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
even just not even. Yeah, it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I can totally relate to that. I think maybe I tried to start trauma and I didn't get through it or something. I've definitely heard that the beginning is like the most shocking part, and then the rest of the film is like not that bad or something. Is that right?
100%. The rest of the movie is
Okay.
actually gonna,
Kind of boring?
but like, well, it starts off so like vile and disgusting with that scene,
Okay.
and if you're gonna start with that, you're gonna have to pace it to kind of keep up. So the rest of the movie isn't. It's nothing spectacular. Like I wouldn't rewatch it. Um,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
another movie kind of along that line. So like, have you seen the movie Hate Crime?
No, no, I've heard about that one. It's like Nazis terrorizing like a Jewish family, is that
Yeah,
right?
like a home
Okay.
invasion. Yeah, they're
Mm,
not. Um, but see, there's another similar scene of that where like that happens.
okay.
Um, but again, like if when you lead or when you have a scene like that, you kind of have to make
Right.
sure the movie follows. You know, can't be
Yeah.
more than that, right?
Yeah, I
But
mean it sounds so tasteless, but it's like if you're gonna have a scene like that, you should maybe put it at the end or like in the middle.
yeah, or like pace it correctly with other
Sure.
goals or like anything extreme, as opposed to that being like the bread and butter, like the crown jewel of what is going to disturb you within a film.
Yeah, I also find too, and I mean, I don't think this happens to you. It doesn't really happen to me, but most people when they watch a film and something like that happens, that's like really offensive. It because it offends people, they tend to like continue the film picking apart every little thing. Do you know what I mean? So that's why if you look at reviews, they're always like 1 out of 10, this was horrible. But it's because like you affected someone emotionally in such an ugly way that they kind of turn into like a critic. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? They're like, I'm going to criticize everything now about this film. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's such a,
oh,
a common reaction.
100%. Well, and a lot of the time, I mean, again, like death metal, horror
Mm.
movies, especially when you start getting into the really extreme, it
Yeah,
is a very heavy barrier to get into just being a casual or even like a cinephile in general. It's
sure.
really hard to get into that. So a lot of people don't know how to even watch those movies,
Hmm.
right? They see some of that stuff. I mean, I remember watching August Underground a couple times, and when we were living at the house in St. Catharines, and John and Derek came down as I'm just like smiling watching this.
Okay.
The guy's dick gets cut off and shoved in his mouth.
Okay.
John and Derek are just like, they look at me, man, I don't feel really good right now. Like, I'm going
Okay.
to leave as
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
casually watching this movie. So, I mean, if you're not exposed to it, if you're not, brought up with it, if you don't know how to
Mhm.
watch, it could be fucking tough, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like you can't just drop someone into something like that right away. You have to kind of work your way up to it. And I think a big part actually is as a kid watching a horror movie, as you said, and it traumatizing you. Because I don't think you watch a horror movie as a kid and say, this isn't scary enough. I'm gonna get scarier movies. It's the fact that it did traumatize you that sort of like it almost starts the relationship you have with going too far. Do you know what I
That,
mean? Like,
and then, I mean, specifically as we, bridge it with metal, because around that
mm,
time, getting to more of the extreme stuff is when my love for more extreme metal and death metal was around.
oh, yeah,
So I
yeah.
like the imagery with death metal is kind of synonymous with, the horror movies. So it's kind of like a natural progression with music and then with the films that you're watching as well, right? Because like horror
Mm.
and metal are so intertwined.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I had a similar trajectory per se, but I think because like death metal to me is definitely connected to horror, but it does bring me a lot of joy. So, you know what I mean? Whereas like a disturbing film makes you feel so bummed out, but it makes me think of like I don't know if you know the series is like Traces of Death.
Yeah, that was after Faces of Death, right?
Yeah, so it was like even more hardcore, like
Okay.
shocking death footage. And I think the second, third, and fourth volumes were all soundtracked by death metal bands. But I think they were like when I watched them as a kid, or I think I watched them maybe in high school or like in my early 20s, and I didn't really know the bands too well, but then it was all like fairly big bands on, I want to say Nuclear Blast did one, and then
Okay.
Relapse Records did one. So I think there's like Meshuggah and stuff is like on.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like bands that you wouldn't even really expect, but I guess if you took like the most brutal Meshuggah song and put it over like car crash
Uh,
footage, like
yeah. So is it
yeah,
the same? Again, it's like one of those, I mean, fairly legendary movies. So like I've seen Faces of Death. Is
yeah,
this is this kind of the same like clip style,
yeah.
like faux or like real accidents with like fake whatever?
Um,
Um,
so this isn't fake stuff. I think like the best way to explain it is like Faces of Death came out and was, marketed as like 100% real, and then people found out later it was like some of it was faked, yada yada, but it blew up. And then Traces of Death came along a few years later, which is like 100% real. And
oh,
I
okay,
would and I would say even like harsher stuff. Um
okay.
the one I might be misremembering this, but the last 10 minutes of the first volume, if I'm not mistaken, is like, do you know about the like Bud Dwyer, the politician who like shot himself in the head?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So it's like I think a few different angles that were caught of that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's as much of that as you will ever need to see. Like it's so long and drawn out
Oh,
and close
so
close ups and
that'd be like going back to the best score kind of thing. It's like this isn't a movie.
yeah.
This is like real life.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
so they went on, like I think the first one had a bit of narration, but like the other entries was like, oh, we're just gonna put like death metal and just make it like clip after clip.
oh, okay.
which I think to some extent can almost uh desensitize you, you know? Like I can't imagine you get to the third one and you're like, oh, it's still freaking me out, you know?
Yeah,
But
well, especially when you're putting on like bangers, it's just like, oh, dude, it's like watching a music video.
yeah, yeah. You'd almost want to just like turn off the video or something, or just buy the soundtrack, you know?
Yeah,
So are your band members like, are they into horror at all?
no,
Oh,
no,
really?
they love the imagery for like an album
Yeah.
or a cover, but no, they can't hang, as the kids
Okay.
say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's too
um
bad.
I mean, Derek can a little bit,
Yeah.
but um it gets, so for example, we every year I rewatch a Serbian film.
Oh shit. Okay.
I mean, well, it's like the poster child for, extreme movies, I feel, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the blockbuster mainstream kind of feel, which
Hmm.
granted it is. Like
Yeah.
they
It
get
is a well-made film for
it.
what it is. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, the gore, the acting, the cinematography is great. And the first time I watched it, when it finished, it was like, ooh, like I don't feel good. Like that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
but rewatching it
Mm.
has made it, maybe I'm desensitized, but it's so
Yeah.
ridiculous and like
Yeah.
quite a bit really funny. So I
Huh.
watch it in a totally different way. But he's seen like that and
Okay.
more like the 90s, classic or 80s slashers and stuff. But he doesn't
Sure.
he doesn't really do the deep dives that I do.
Okay.
So like he's a horror fan, but he's not, I don't want to say gore hound because like I feel like that's not diminishing because it's more than that, but like he doesn't go down the rabbit hole, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's more casual, a
Yeah.
casual horror fan. Yeah. When I saw a Serbian film the first time, it was when Rue Morgue screened it at the Bloor Cinema. So I
Oh
got to see it. Yeah, so I got to see it in
oh
theaters, and it was I went with a couple friends, and we were all just like completely shocked by it. But the scene with I'll just say like newborn porn. Do you know what I'm talking about? And he's like, it's a new genre, Milos, newborn porn. The whole audience burst out laughing. So it is
okay.
kind of funny. Like it is depressing, disturbing, shocking, all of that. But it's also just hard not to laugh at moments like that, you know?
Oh,
It's kind of
100%.
like I don't know if you're a fan of the Human Centipede films.
Oh man. So like, well, I mean, that was when I was in high school, that was kind of like blowing up.
Right,
First
right.
one cut you off. Like the first one's, it is what it is. The second one's bleak. The third one is
So
so
good.
funny and
Oh,
so
I
much
know.
fun.
Yeah.
Like,
It's funny because like I discovered it, I think I watched it on Netflix or something in like 2013 or 2014 and was like, okay, wait, this is hilarious. Like
yeah,
why is this is my favorite one of the three. And I tried showing friends and like only the occasional one would be down. My wife's like, never put that on. It's taken me until like I think last year I finally showed one of my good friends and he was blown away. He's just like, this is one of the funniest films I've ever
dude,
seen. Like it's
it's
upsetting, but it's hilarious.
I went, and then I mean the second one's pretty, like the second one is the darkest
Yeah.
of the three. I mean, it's gritty, it's mean, it's really dark, it's like
Yeah.
angry. But like the other two are just, it's just
Yeah.
a good time. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I think the third one to me, it almost like I don't know if you're like, were you ever a fan of like Tim and Eric Awesome Show?
that's like I know of it, but I didn't.
Oh, it was just like Adult Swim like comedy
Yeah,
show, but just like really awkward, kind of bizarre comedy, and it just
yeah.
made me feel like that. Like it leans way more into like the comedy aspect of the film. So
Hunt. Well, because what's his name? That's Six, right? Tom Six.
yeah,
He did those.
yeah.
It's like he was self-aware of like the
Mm-hmm.
just the entire. It's like he was almost, maybe this is a poor analogy, but like breaking the fourth wall with the third one, and just like
Totally.
knowing how ridiculous the concept was to begin with, and just like as you said, like running with that side of the movies. because it's so funny.
Oh yeah. He made another film that I think is like in distribution hell or something. Like it's they're having a hard time getting it out. But I don't know if you're familiar with the director John Waters.
I love.
He Okay, sweet. Okay, so he's seen this film. I can't remember what it's called. It has kind of a weird name, like the Onansi Project or something. And so
Okay.
he said it's amazing, and it's basically following a group of these like rich upper class
Oh,
women.
love the 9/11 thing, right?
Well, yeah, it's like
They get
they get
pleasure to
yeah, from
like.
watching like human
Yeah,
tragedies and stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did
I
hear
really want to see that based on
about.
like what we're talking about with part 3 is that okay, that guy doing that as a movie, like that sounds hilarious, but I've just heard it's so offensive that they're not able to distribute it, so I don't know what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that. I forget what interview I was listening to because they were talking
Mm.
about. And yeah, like this group of like women get like sexual pleasure from watching. Apparently, there's a scene of them like them watching the 9/11 video and just
Oh
like.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it sounds so wild. I think if it's been made and it's out there some way, like people have been seeing screenings of it, it's gonna end up in our hands at some point, you know?
100.
So maybe on
100%.
fedupmovies.com or
Yeah.
something. Have you have you like watched everything on there so far or
uh, yes and no. I mean, it's to an extent, it's like the other Tubi, right? I mean, there's a
yeah.
lot of gem. I thought movies is great if you kind of know what you're looking for,
Yeah.
but if you're like a casual, nobody. Well, again, nobody casually goes through fdupmovies.com.
No.
If you're on fdupmovies.com, you are there for a reason, and you kind of know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I've done some deep dives there. I mean, it's
Mm.
great with everything, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can't find it on the internet. It's going to be on FDUP movies.
Right, right. I haven't used it that much because I think the first time I tried to use it, I started getting some really gnarly pop-ups from it. That was like, oh man, I think this is like a weird virus. But since then, I've installed like pop-up blockers and stuff,
Okay.
and so it's okay to use. But I think I've really only watched on their Tumbling Dolls of Flesh, which we were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is whew, that's a dark
It's
one.
that is a dark one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like as we were talking about, yeah, the like the gore and stuff is okay, but when it's like that sexual aggression towards women, it's like that's
Yeah.
the like, yeah, I don't like that.
No, I think I feel like the film made a point about something maybe. I don't know. It's weird. It's like when I watch a film like that, it's like this is misogyny, obviously, but it's I didn't feel like the film was like promoting misogyny. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's fair. And I mean, I know there's always that point, especially with horror movies, but I never, maybe I just too naive and like don't
Mm,
want to believe that way about society, but I always try not to think about it as misogyny and
sure.
just is. Having said that, that's why I love all those, like I Spit on Your Grave or what's the other one? Uh Woman of Hate or Year of the Woman or whatever. All those like
Never another one.
women revenge movies.
Yeah, yeah.
It feels really good, right?
Yeah, I think revenge is like you know the one plot that like anyone can kind of get behind. Like you can't run out of ideas with revenge. It always feels good to see. Even if
Yeah,
you don't agree with revenge in like real life, it's enjoyable to watch. Oh, someone got the worst thing happen to them and then they did the worst thing back. Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah.
It's it's sort of that like emotional cathartic feel that you hope to get from metal.
That's absolutely fair.
We're
Actually,
tying
on
it
that
all
note,
back.
yeah, we're bringing it back. Yeah. Um, did you see the recent I Spit on Your Grave from like 20, was it 19 or something?
I saw the first one. I know there's like a bunch of remakes or something, or
Yeah.
a bunch
So
of sequels.
the first one's great, and then the other two are kind of like whatever. But
Okay.
they made another one. I guess that would be the fourth in 2000. I think it was 19, and
Okay.
tried to bring back the 70s nostalgia feel
Okay.
while like bridging the gap plot wise with the other three movies.
Mm.
And it is fucking so bad I had to turn it off.
Oh no.
They
Okay.
tried to be, I don't know, campy with it, but it falls so flat, and it's so far from what both the remake and the original tried to be. I had to turn it
Hmm.
off.
Was that one is also really long? Or am I
I
wrong
bel
about that?
I wouldn't even know because I turned it off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like I was reading about one of the sequels is like well over 2 hours, which was kind of a lot of people were like, why is it so long? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need a movie like that to be past
No,
90 minutes. So
no. On the kind of like female empowering movies, I don't know if you've seen the movie Brutal.
brutal. Is
Uh,
that like a Japanese one or
yeah,
something? Or okay.
it's like
No, I haven't seen it.
a male and female serial killer. I won't like spoil
Mm,
anything. Kind of
okay.
like there's snippets, and it feels like it's produced on like a 35 millimeter, kind of like
Oh, okay.
the the chalky kind of like scriggles and cuts in the scenes. But
Mm,
it's about this, serial killer who does his thing. It's just like ultra violence against women and stuff, but falls in love with the female serial killer, and it's like loosely about their relationship, and the end of it, like he gets murdered. So it's like
okay.
this weird semi commentary about, I don't know if you can find it that, but like the
Mm,
psychology of serial killers and whatnot. It's pretty good. It's super graphic, lots of great gore.
yeah.
Uh, like an easy watch. It's like an hour and 6 minutes or something.
Oh,
But
that's a good
it's like
runtime.
very yeah yeah. But it's not a revenge movie, but it has that like other like not masculine side to horror,
Sure, sure.
which I mean I love. I think we need more of that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I
But
agree.
I want to see more violence against men, like
Yeah,
right?
it's I think like I guess how would I put this? Like people I think want to see films just completely cleaned up of like violence or torture or anything like that. And I feel like if we were to do that, we'd be missing the opportunity to finally give that to men because it's been so imbalanced for so long. Do you know what I mean? Of like, oh, well, we came up in the 70s and 80s where it was like mostly women getting killed. Like
Yeah,
we need to bring the scale back a bit.
yeah. Well, that's what I love now, especially with like the whole LGBTQ plus community
Yeah.
coming in and directing horror movies, and it's like it's such a
Hmm.
fresh air because it's like fuck yeah, like let's get it right.
Yeah, it gives you something different to watch
Yeah,
instead of just like the same old like formula every time. So yeah,
100%.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure. And I think we're at like a good spot now with horror where like there's such a wide variety of like directors making stuff. So yeah, it's like keeping the whole genre fresh and everything. So yeah, yeah. But we should maybe move to the questionnaire. So questionnaire time.
Get it.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee, black coffee.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Choose one film for the rest of your life.
Probably Strange Brew.
Bob and Doug McKenzie?
Oh,
Okay. If you had to be an animal, which would you choose?
orangutan.
Wow, you said that really
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
You thought about this
Oh
before.
yeah. Yeah,
Orangutan. Okay, sweet. What happens when we die?
you rot in the ground.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Song title that best describes your life.
Song title. Oh man, probably Dead as Fuck.
Oh, by your
Yeah,
band.
August. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. I like when I do the questionnaire and people pick stuff related to their own work. Like I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Stephen Grishuk, but I picked like when I asked him like choose one film for the rest of your life, he said probably one of my own films because then when I watch it, I can think of all the memories I had with my friends making it.
Right?
I was like, yeah, I'm like, that's a wonderful
Yeah.
answer. So we need more of that. So Dead as Fuck, which is
Yeah.
off Sadism and Severed Heads.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I'll put that, maybe I'll end the episode with that song to bring us
Perfect.
out. So yeah,
Thanks, Bob.
cool.
It's
Yeah,
been
good
fun.
talking with you, man.
Cheers.
All right, have a
Yeah.
good day.
We'll catch you around, buddy.
Yeah, see ya.